Welcome back to the Kentucky History Podcast. I'm your host, Jamison Cable, and I have another special guest here. I have Kathy Keyser, the Grant Committee Chair of the Kentucky Genealogical Society, and we're going to talk about some Kentucky genealogy, correct?
That's correct, Jamison. Thanks for having me.
Well, we on the podcast, of course, are talking about history, and a lot of people who enjoy history have that bug of finding out where they're from, who they came from, and that's kind of one of the ways that I got started. My mother did my did our family genealogy trees. She has since started writing little books about each branch of the family and this and that, and that, I guess, love for history is connected to me as well. But before we get too much in that, Kathy, tell us a little bit about your Kentucky connection, where you came from, those sorts of things.
Okay. Well, I came from the West Virginia coal fields, but have spent most of my life here in Kentucky, living in Ashland area for a long time, and now I'm in Lexington. My researching had mostly been in West Virginia and Ohio, but I have roots here in Kentucky. So that's when I got involved in the Kentucky Genealogical Society so that they could help me further my research on my Kentucky family.
Well, we gotta mention, of course, a lot of people from Kentucky have those Ohio roots, and West Virginia as well. The immigration kind of went east to west, and we've got those good connections. About anybody you talk to, I guess, around here in Kentucky have some family that moved to Ohio at some point, and worked there in the 60s, 70s. I have kin that moved to Ohio back in the 60s, I believe, is around that time. With genealogy, what exactly got you into genealogy in the first place? Typically, I say, we get the bug, or you get hit with it, and it's kind of a nonstop thing. But what got you into it?
Well, it was a Christmas gift for my dad. In the early 1980s, I was looking for something special to give him for Christmas. And so I bought one of those family trees that you fill in all the names. Uh-huh. And I thought it was just going to be, real easy to do. I was just going to copy in some names. Well, I found out real early that it's not that easy. And it was like you said, the genealogy bug bit me, and I've been doing it ever since. So I guess it's going kind of on like 40 years I've been doing this. I enjoy doing it for myself as well as friends. I interact with people in different organizations, and they'll say, "Oh, I've got this brick wall," and so I'll think, I'll just look and see what I can find out for them. So that's kind of how I got into it. Yeah, and of course, genealogy and history go so much together that then you want to study what was going on in the area. For the particular time period. So I find myself just as much as a family historian as I do a genealogist.
Yeah, well, that's very true. When you're looking at different time periods, it matters a lot. You can figure out more about maybe what they were thinking, what was going on, how things. I'm sure you've spent many times looking at newspapers and all those. I tell you, I get lost very much because I think there's newspaper.com. I use the Library of Congress as well, and hours can go by really fast just going through old newspapers. But you mentioned too the brick wall. It was so funny. One time somebody reached out to me and they were talking about their family ancestors and this and that, and they said, "I've got to a brick wall it was like Garrett County." And for the longest time I was like, what do they mean, a brick wall? He actually went to Garrett County and it was at a brick wall. I was like, I cannot figure it out. But what's a brick wall? Tell us what a brick wall is.
It's when you come to the end of a research and you can't get past it as you're going back. And so you have to go and rethink it. What is out there that I can look at, whether it be city directories or, like you said, newspapers, or sometimes they're personal records that different organizations might have. So you can get around it. Or another thing is you can research the people that lived around your family or the people that married into your family. And sometimes you can find how to get past where you're at by doing that.
Yeah. A lot of research and having those connections, which is important. And that's gonna, I guess, bring us into just tell us, what is the Kentucky Genealogy Society, and what all does it entail? What's it made for, and those sorts of, barring the obvious things, of course. But
well, the Kentucky Genealogical Society, we are a grassroots group. We don't own a building. We don't have any employees. We do not receive any government funding. It is all volunteers. And we are here to encourage the preservation and availability of Kentucky records. We want to bring people together that are interested in researching their families, or historians that want to promote, and we want to promote fellowship, and we want to promote networking. So we other than having a post office box, that's all we have.
Yeah. So like you mentioned preserving records, how would when we're saying preserving records, like if I had records, I could give them to you all, or how does that, or are you digitizing them, so forth?
Well, and that brings up a good point. We have a committee, a grant committee, which I currently am chairing. What we do is we are taking applications right now through November 1st from different organizations that have valuable Kentucky documents that, if they're not preserved, then there's a chance that we could lose them.
Yeah.
And so on our website, under the section, what we do, there is a grant section that explains the process that they need to go through, the applications there for them to fill out, and what we're interested in. We're interested in newspapers or city directories, yearbooks, local vital records, even adoption records or church records. And these are records that are mostly in paper format. And what we're going to do is we will take those applications until November 1st, and we have a committee. There is 7 of us. 3 of us are from inside. We live within the boundaries of Kentucky, and 3 are outside. We have people in Arkansas. One of our members is in Virginia, Minnesota. As you can see, we do work all the way across the United States. And we're going to review these applications and look at how much they can digitize for what estimate they're giving us.
Yeah.
And we will come up with some recipients that we feel should be awarded a grant. Those will be presented to the board of directors at their board meeting in December, and they will make the final decision. And then applicants that are given the grants are notified in January. This is the 3rd year that we have done this, and we give up to $5,000.
Oh, wow. And so once, another question I guess I have, so once, can people join? Anybody can join, or how does that work?
As to the membership, yes, anybody can join. Individual membership is $20 a year. And for your membership, of course, you get the networking. With the pandemic, we are mostly online. So we offer our members a lot of online seminars. And in fact, there will be one coming up this Saturday that is going to be free to anybody. And it is kind of beginning genealogy.
Yeah.
So I encourage anybody to go to our website, which is kygs.org. And it is the information about that is on there, as well as how to join as a member.
So whenever you're doing a genealogy, I guess, research, you're going to get tips. What's some good tips for people if they're wanting to get started? Like where to look for, where to begin, You mentioned that, you kind of all started genealogy back whenever you were putting it together for your father. Because a lot of people, they might be interested, where did I come from, my ancestors, but they don't know where to begin or even where to start looking. What's some good tips?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would talk to your parents, your grandparents, aunts, uncles, and gather stories that way. Because sometimes you think you know your family. Like, for instance, when I first got involved, I talked to my parents. I really didn't think that my grandfather had any brothers or sisters because there had never been any around when I was growing up. And then I found out that he had like 5 siblings, and his dad had like 14 siblings. So I had all these cousins out there that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
And then there are a lot of free websites. FamilySearch.org is a free website that is through the Mormon Church that you can get on and put in your grandparents' name and their birth date, and you'll be surprised what all you can find in just one little easy search.
Mm-hmm. How often do you mentioned this before, because how often, I guess, once somebody finds out about their family, do people branch off and just start finding out, researching everybody's family? Or I guess whenever I think about that, like if I was to think, I'm going to search up this person, and then boom, all this information pops up, I would think, barring if my mother hadn't already done it, I would think, who did all this? I mean, are there people out there who are just putting people's family trees together of people they don't know? Or
yes, you would be surprised of the hundreds of thousands of people that are putting trees out there of themselves. I will be sometimes searching someone in particular that in my family and come upon somebody that's put a tree out there. I have no idea who they are or how I would be related to them. And a lot of the different services, you can communicate with them, send them a message, and sometimes they send messages back, sometimes they don't. But there's the census. If you're familiar with the U.S. Census, that are every 10 years from 1790 until 1940. So you're going to find everybody that lived during that time period on a census.
Yeah. Were you all pretty interested or pretty pumped up when the 1941 came out or was released?
The 1940, yes. And we're not far from the 1950. I think it's like in 3 more years. It will be released. And so then they will be, all the different organizations will be asking for volunteers to transcribe those census so that they're searchable.
Yeah. And whenever you mean transcribe, you mean like putting them, reading the names, putting them digitally. Is that, yeah.
Yes. So like right now, if you went in to a genealogy site and you searched your grandparents' name with, maybe the year they were born, then you're going to see all those census that they were in is going to pop up on your results.
Gotcha. And then if you have a mystery, you can put 2 and 2 together. Is it a bit of a mystery? Is that what it is? Like, solving the mystery, is that a bit of the push?
It is. It's a lot like solving a mystery.
Whenever you are putting a tree together, how is there sometimes, are there some easier, some harder? How does that go? As far as like whenever you're putting a tree together, sometimes it get a little hard, or sometimes there easier ones, and what's the difference? I guess if you find an easy one, why was it easy?
And it's interesting. Most of the time when I'm helping somebody, their tree was much easier than mine, or at least I look at it that way. Yeah. If you have any adoption within your tree, then that really is difficult to. It's not impossible, but it is difficult to do because you have to go past them and find cousins and come forward to try to connect them. And sometimes when they live in rural areas, it can be difficult. But it's usually just a matter of keep searching. Yeah. I've never had anyone in my tree that I couldn't find something on.
Yeah, no, Yeah, and that's kind of how it goes. Any kind of history. You mentioned Ashland. Joe Castle. He came on the show a while back, and he had written a book about the Ashland tragedy. And
Yes.
he just mentioned a lot. You just do research. It took him 12 years or so, I think, to write the whole book, but just because he was just do research as he went, and it can be a quite a bit of a undertaking to do such thing. I mean, I mentioned my mom, and she's been doing this for 25 years or so, back when I was quite young. So I can remember we took a family trip to Pineville, and we went to like Train Rock and this and that. But then we had to go to the graveyard there in Pineville to find a lost relative or a connection. And which me at 10 thought that was a bit odd, but I understand now. If somebody was wanting to reach out, what would they want to ask, or what kind of resources do you all have available now? As in, like, if somebody wanted to say, "Hey, I'm going to call up the society," is there any? What would you provide them? And I guess that might go along with if they were a member too. What access do they have?
Well, there's several things. One thing is that these documents that are these grants that we have given to these different organizations, there's been 4 of them so far. Those documents, like for instance, the Filson Historical Society that's in Louisville, we gave them a grant to digitize the Baptist orphan records that they have in their possession. So, and that's a real unique set of documents. Those are on the members only side of the website. So if you're a member, you can use those documents.
Gotcha.
We gave money to Todd County Public Library, who digitized documents from their local historian, Francis Fox. Mm-hmm. Those are in the process of being added to that site. And then there was Carroll County Public Library that we gave a grant to. And they had all these documents that they digitized, like one-of-a-kind original maps, drawings, photos, family histories. And because of their location, and we were talking about this earlier when we were talking about West Virginia and Ohio people coming through Kentucky, the Ohio River was like an interstate that we think of today, and that's how people traveled. Well, coming down and into Carroll County, a lot of families came through Carroll County, passed through, and then went to other areas of Kentucky to settle. So there could be documents of your family if you went through that way. So we offer these kind of valuable documents to our members, as well as additional educational and training seminars or presentations. We have those usually at least once a month, and they're on different subjects. We've had great national genealogical speakers come and talk with us. For instance, this was an in-person meeting before the pandemic, but Blaine Bettinger, who is he is a DNA researcher, and he came and did a seminar for us that was wonderful. Uh-huh. So these are some of the things that we offer, as well as networking with other researchers, maybe in the same area that you're researching, or you have your brick wall.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's perfect. I'm sure there's a lot of people who could benefit from that, especially the maps, because you bring up the maps, and I do like the old maps because they really, especially if you can get them that are really old, that has like the stations, they still have Bryan Station or whatever it may be. Those are the really cool ones, the really old ones. There's a few of those on the Library of Congress that are 1780, 1796. They're really old, especially the Kentucky maps, of course. But even getting to those hand-drawn one, there's one, the Lincoln County Historical Society has one of Lincoln County, a drawn map, and it's pretty cool to look at. Whenever we make little videos about a county or whatever, I try to find as many nice maps that um, I can find. It helps tell the story, of course. Well, one thing that I've often found researching, and my mom tells me often about as well, is courthouse fires. Those are kind of, I guess, brick walls are quite devastating. What do you do when you get to a person, they were here, the courthouse had burned, or what kind of brick wall does that create, I guess?
Well, when you get to a brick wall, again, you have to look for other documents besides what that courthouse had. And the further you get back, the fewer documents you have to look at. One thing, though, that you can look for is like family histories. They might not mention your relative, but they might talk about where they lived and give examples or give you examples of how they would have lived or what they would have done. I have a similar, and I really don't think of it anymore as a brick wall because I've kind of gone around, but this is a West Virginia family, and the county that my family lived in, if you go back far enough, that county was part of another county.
Yeah.
And so when I did that, there was a courthouse that had been burned. And this was a recently discovery of mine. I knew that they had served in the militia in Pennsylvania during the Revolutionary War. But because it was militia, there's not much documentation or anything. And the county I needed to research in West Virginia the records didn't exist. So I went back a little bit further and I found them. And they had bought property out of Ohio County, West Virginia, because the area there, as well as over into Washington County, Pennsylvania, was in dispute between Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Ohio. So by looking around, sometimes you can gather more documents, even though that courthouse was destroyed. Newspapers are another way. They wrote things differently in newspapers then than they do today. Like if your relative went and visited their grandparents, it might say, yes. And so you say, hey, okay, here's evidence they were there, they were visiting. And it also, if you didn't know who those grandparents were, you just got their name.
Yeah. And then you can start searching that name and the snowball increases.
Yes.
That's so funny. Newspapers from the old days are, they basically like Facebook and that sort of stuff today. Johnny went to see his grandparents in Stanford or whatever it may be.
Yes, or they might say that there was a birthday party, and they give everybody that came to the birthday party, and right there you can see, oh well, there's my family and their sisters and brothers and the cousins, and it's all in that little article.
It's interesting to think, you have your news reporter coming to your 10th birthday party or your 10-year-old's birthday party. Like, who else? Let me take note of this. But that happens. That was the way word got around, I guess. So different times. Well, tell me, you talked about how long has the society been around? When did it begin?
I don't really know the answer to that question.
Well,
but I'm sure it tells on our website.
Yeah. Well, I was kind of thinking, because I was like, on Facebook, and I don't know if this is a connection or not, but there's all the county genealogy groups, and there'll be one for this county or that county. And I didn't know. I didn't think. Are you all connected to those groups?
We are on Facebook.
Okay.
We're not directly connected to those groups. We are on Facebook, and I encourage people to go over and like us and follow us, because we share genealogy tips on there daily. And Jameson, I just looked up while we were talking, and the Kentucky Genealogical Society was started in 1973.
Okay. So, well, I was thinking that it had to be a little while,
Yes.
Yeah, because I remember reading. Well, you know what? I now, yeah, I remember reading it on the Facebook page, the about. I went and looked at it there.
And I might tell you too, you asked if we were connected to those groups. We are not, but we have been reaching out to them. We would, like to try to start networking a little bit more with them. One reason right now we've been reaching out to them is because of the grant program and that it's running right now. A lot of counties in Kentucky that had genealogical societies, they don't exist anymore, or they are like you see on Facebook, where they are a group of people that has a passion in that county, that shares history and stories, and are there to even help. I've gone over in Kentucky, especially. I have contacted them and said, well, I've got this question. Can you tell me where I could find this, or where else, what other documents or other records would be available somewhere that I could find this answer? And people are very helpful there. Well, we've been reaching out to them to be able to start working a little bit more with them, and also to let them know about our grant program, because they may have documents in their possessions that are worth preserving, that's one of our number one goals with the grant program.
Yeah. Well, Kathy, I hope and think that this has been very informative for those people who are interested in genealogy, and maybe they've been bitten by that bug. It's just not got they've not got moving yet. But also too, and I'll ask this. I guess I kind of already did ask it. Where to get started? Maybe it's that first find. That first mystery that they solve or you solve that really gets you going. But like you said before, just having that desire, I guess, and that's how have you kept it going? The desire with genealogy. How have you kept? I guess you said you've been doing it for about 40 years now. Is it just the next mystery? I guess.
Well, when you find something, there's always another question that arises. I mentioned my great-great-grandfather, that I found out that, he and my great-great-grandmother had 15 children. And then I found out that I knew that he was a country doctor, and he got his medical degree in Ohio. He was a surgeon during the Civil War.
Oh,
so
wow.
Now that's opened up another area for me to research, where was he at? Where did he serve? Since we know how medical was then,
Yes.
it opens up a whole new area to research. And that's how it is when you're researching and you go after one particular answer to a question you have, you just find more questions.
It's an endless cycle, right? It never.
That's correct.
Now, I'll ask this. So your great-grandfather, right? So he would have been
great-grandfather.
In West Virginia as well?
Yes.
Would he have been Union?
He was in West Virginia and he actually was in Ohio, and he was Union. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I obviously I've had a few people come on and talk about the Civil War and so forth, and West Virginia, Ohio definitely, and Kentucky actually was, especially Eastern Kentucky, was quite strong Union. So I just kind of assumed that was probably the case, but yeah. Well, before we wrap it up, go over again, let people know how to connect to the Kentucky Genealogy Society and on social media and so forth.
Well, the best place to start is at our website at kygs.org, and you can find out about what we're doing, how to become a member, what we're offering at the time as to presentations and online research. Also, follow us on Facebook for genealogical tips, and also we are on Twitter and Instagram. Yes.
That sounds pretty good. I've been following the page, and I do enjoy the tips as well. It's one of those things, though. I do kind of get a little bummed sometimes because my mom has already kind of figured out most of our tree. I'm like, well, what have I got to look for? So,
Oh, I'm sure there's plenty out there you haven't
yeah.
found yet.
Well, that's true. Yeah, yeah. I think she got it. Well, she wants to go to Europe, and because that you know, as many Kentuckians and well, in general, Americans probably have a lot of connections to Europe. But she wants to go to Europe, to Germany and England and all that. And that's her next step.
We have a big population in Kentucky of Irish as well. And so
Yes.
that's where I would like to go, is Ireland.
Yeah.
You see the Irish walls everywhere down here in the Lexington area that the Irish built.
Yeah. Well, this is funny. So over this past summer, we took a family trip to Disney World and all that, and my niece and my mom and dad, they all went with us, and a good time, of course. Well, then a few weeks later, well, about a month later, my mom and my dad and my niece, which my niece is a freshman in high school now, they went on a trip to North Carolina, and they kind of went, I guess, it was a genealogy trip, as in, she was tracing back to, the lines. I guess you would just call it a genealogy trip, I guess. Well, they got back, and I asked my niece, I was like, well, when you go back to school, which one are you going to brag about the most? The genealogy trip to the cemeteries or going to Disney World? my mom took a little offense to it, though. I think she liked her trip better, but
I can understand that. I've been on many interesting genealogy trips.
Yeah.
Tried looking for a cemetery, using your GSP, GPS, that we did that one time, and we asked for the quickest way to get there, and it took us over this hill that went from like a 2-lane to a dirt road, and we ended up in a like a coal mine area. Oh, wow. And there was this little cemetery there.
Yeah.
So they can be interesting.
Well, that's very true. You can find there are some cemeteries off put in on somebody's farm, somebody's farm back, miles, acres back into somebody's farm. You have no idea who they are, and you gotta go knock on the door. That's all I have for now. Do you have anything else? Anything else you want to add before we sign off here?
No, I just encourage people to check us out. That come and join us, and let's see what's out there that we can still find about our families.
Yes, I agree tremendously. Preserving history and genealogy is a big part of that history. And oftentimes we do shows, or we talk about topics, or make a video about these big events and these big people. But the real history is your family history, and going through genealogy and finding those people. I think sometimes is way more important than who fought at this battle and who was the general for this. Those personal history connections are way more impressive.
Well, and when you look at your personal history, and there are tragedies, and sometimes you sit back and you think, how did they make it? How did they survive the way they had to live? And the truth be known, if they hadn't made it, you wouldn't be here today.
Exactly. That's I couldn't say it no better. That's perfect. Well, with that, again, check out the Kentucky Genealogy Society on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Go to the website
KYGS.org. Yes.
And follow them on Facebook. Plenty of good tips out there. You can check out our stuff as well. And I'll put a link to your all's website in the show notes whenever we publish or release the episode. And you can find all of our links there as well. Kathy, thanks again for joining us, and we'll have to do it again.
Sounds good, Jameson. Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.